This podcast is a critical evaluation of our short film Choked, and it's just going to be discussing how it challenges, uses, and develops the conventions of typical media products. In this case, our film was meant to be a social realism film, and therefore most of the discussion will centre around how it both fits in and goes against the social realism genre. But we'll also be talking about the editing techniques and other ways in which our film is effectively appealing to an audience. Our film first and foremost adheres to the conventions of social realism as it focuses upon real-life issues faced by real-life people, particularly young adults in this case, who are typically excluded or feel like they're alone. This is seen in such films as The Breakfast Club, programmes like Skins, Stand By Me, This Is England. If you look towards films such as The Breakfast Club, it is apparent straight away from the David Bowie quote that appears that it's not only a film about youngsters but also their struggles. And the entire plotline of that film really culminates around the scene in the library where the 5 students who are from completely different social groups are sharing their problems, and it suddenly dawns on them that despite the differences, they are all overcoming adversity and pressure and insecurity of some sort. We managed to create a similar sense in Choked, as Jordan appears as like an average Joe type guy. He's not bad looking or fat or even getting awful grades. And in the same way that The Breakfast Club shows that all the cliques of youngsters face troubles, even if you don't expect it, and Stand By Me highlights the rebellious Chris actually caring about school and being hurt by other people's assumptions about him, our film shows that Jordan doesn't look like someone who should be suffering from body dysmorphia, yet he is. And that's the point of social realism, really, is to challenge assumptions. And that awkward age of young adulthood is when you most feel like you're not being heard. And this is the age group being represented in Choked, so that is how our film is able to fall into the social realism category and adhere to the conventions. However, I would say that our film is also good for parents, as it builds their understanding of what their children might be going through. And so in this way, it's actually developing the social realism form even further, because it's not just telling Jordan's story, but it's giving a message and informing the audience. Because we did a lot of research into the theme of body dysmorphia, I feel like our film was very informed. And that meant that we were able to present the issue in a very sensitive and a very professional way. But we were also able to handle the emotional tackles more, because we didn't want to present it in a scientific way. We wanted it to be character-driven. Like in 3 Tears for Jimmy Prophet, for example, another social realism film, it isn't a documentary investigating ex-convicts. It zoomed in on a specific man's personal story. And that way the audience could sympathise with him. And social realist audiences want to see the character-based struggles, because social realism is really made by the characters and their relationships with others. They highlight the extremities of issues within a short amount of time, but reject complete realism so that the soundtrack and plot lines can engage the audience emotionally and create pathos. However, I do think that a lot of social realism films have a more severe style than our film, like a more rawness, if you like. Our film uses a combination of music and editing techniques, such as the choppiness coinciding with Jordan's emotions and deliberate shaky cam, allowing it to have a dramatic, uneasy and stable effect. Although, notice how the camera is perfectly level in the final scenes as Jordan grounds himself and reminds himself of the positives in his life, and he's gaining a more logical view on things. The music we use appeals to the audience as young adults because they do tend to see their lives in a dramatised way, especially with their hormones raging and being heightened. And we use music that they would have heard of to represent a range of social groups, because they're all from different genres. But while this appeals to the age range we were open to, obviously it does take away from the naturalism, as there's no soundtrack in the backing of life. However, even though this challenges the conventions of social realism, I do think it adds to the film, because I think it really does accentuate what Jordan is going through without having to tell the audience explicitly. And this insider, intimate knowledge of the character's thoughts and feelings is what social realism is really about. It develops a social realism form, which is all about revealing what people are going through and how better to express true emotions than through inner monologues and emotion surreal. So obviously it takes away from the conventions of social realism. However, if social realism gives access to a mindset and a thought process, then it can be excused, as the montage is similar to the contemplation going on inside Jordan's head. Programs such as Skins or My Mad Fat Diary, which was actually based on a first-hand diary account, so is the closest you can get to realism. Though these examples are social realism, they still use fantasy sequences to develop their character stories and reasoning and backstories. And it manages to get across parts of the story that you can't explicitly state, especially with us within the 5 minutes. That's what the montage does. So the montage was an effective way for us to use our time to our advantage. It leaves a certain amount up for the audience interpretation. Since the aim of social realism is to get people to think, then surely it achieved its goal. By making them interpret the story themselves from what they're seeing, you're making them think about it. They can't just ignore it or doze off. You're making them consider what it is they're taking from the film. It means that you can get more of the characters built up within it and within a short amount of time. We plan for the film to have the typical 5-part structure with beginning, middle and end and rising and falling action in between. But when we looked it over, we saw that the structure was too long-winded, and so therefore it was hard to follow all the different storylines going on. We made the decision to focus solely on Jordan and challenge conventions by having the film begin in the middle of Jordan's issue, in the midst of his battle. It starts with rising action straight away. This has been the case in some media products, but it's not generally the case in social realism. We rearranged narratives so that, as an audience, you were thrown into the middle of the disorder, and the audience is immediately overwhelmed. But this is the same overwhelming sensation that Jordan himself is experiencing. It then builds up to the climax where he smashes up the bathroom and declines in its chaos until the end. But then again, even though the action does decrease towards the end, so that the audience is left with more calm than tension, there isn't really a resolution. This is a part of the social realism genre that isn't really part of many other genres, maybe perhaps horror or historical, but a lot of the ending is left up to the audience to decide what happens. It's open-ended. We still provide for them that feeling of catharsis by presenting them with Jordan's small moment of acceptance of himself, but all is not solved. He looks in the mirror and smiles, but that doesn't mean he gets over the disorder. I mean, that might be a good day, but then he might have a bad day the next. The thing is, life is like that, and with life you can have good days and bad days, and you're not going to get over an issue like that quickly. The film is not about showing how somebody overcame the issue. Choked is about drawing attention and understanding towards the issue, and therefore educating people. Therefore, I think it achieved its goal.